This is the moment we chess fans have all been waiting for. And finally, it's really happening. There is an official match between the two most famous chess players of all time. Magnus Carlsen, world's number one, 5-time world champion, playing against Hans Niemann. Their history, their personal history is going back more than 2 years. As remember that in famous game the two played against each other at the Sinkfield Cup in St. Louis. Hans won and Magnus withdrew from the tournament, accusing his opponent from cheating. And well, the rest is history. I mean, a lawsuit, a lot of dirty talk about each other. And even like 1 month before this particular match taking place in Paris, there was a lot of trash talk as Magnus felt like, okay, he should win this match. And Hans saying also that, well, if Magnus loses this match, then his career will be over. Many more things were said, but this is the match we all want to see. This is something chess fans and also people who are not into chess, they really want to see this drama happening at the board. Well, in fact, the two were playing at the same venue, in the same room, but playing their moves online. And even there was a bit of drama involved, as there were some technical issues happening during this match. But you want to see what happened on the board. Who managed to win this game and advance to the final, as they are the winner of this match, will play against Alireza Firouzja, who earlier on this day managed to completely outplay Hikaru Nakamura in a fantastic match. But back to the match. Magnus Carlsen against Hans Niemann. And it's not about prize money. Of course, there is prize money involved, but this is about honor, about boosting your ego and destroy your main enemy in the chess world. Because even though they settled in this 100 million lawsuit case, I mean, they still really don't like each other. That hasn't changed at all. Well, remember, this Speed Chess Championships, it's played within 3 segments. You have the 5+1 section, the 3+1 and the 1+1. And I mean, you can like it or not, but Magnus is, before this match, going into this match, the huge favorite on paper. And looking at the match from Hans' perspective, I was actually wondering what are his best chances in which segment. And well, I think in all the segments Magnus is really good. It's not that you can try to do damage control in the 5+1 section and then think that you can get away with it in the bullet. No, that's not going to be easy at all. Well, we start with a couple of games. I want to cover the highlights of this match, so I'm not covering it all. First, we have 90 minutes of 5+1, and there are a couple of interesting games. Let's start with the first game of this match, as Magnus starts the game with 1b3. Magnus with white, Hans with black, d5, knight f3, bishop f5. Quiet opening, very typical for Magnus. I think he really wants to avoid theoretical battles, as that's what he has been doing throughout his career mainly. So I just bring up the first couple of moves. This is all pretty standard. Can be reached by different move orders from the Reti, but also from the English opening. And now I think a lot of people would just go c6, try to play as solid as possible. But Magnus here is facing the move knight c6. I thought this was a remarkable idea by Hans. Probably he wants to go for the move d4 at some point. And therefore Magnus opens up the position. Pawn takes d5, black recaptures, rook c1. Black puts the rook on the e file, potentially targeting the pawn on e2, rook e1, bishop f8. And now a very thematical maneuver as the rook comes to c2. What's this rook doing? Well, sometimes you can overprotect the pawn, but mainly very soon you would like to go queen a1. Intensify the pressure on this diagonal, possibly against the knight on the c file as well. Hans starts the game with a beautiful maneuver, knight b8. What is the idea of this move? Well, if you go queen a1, there's knight d7 and everything is very well protected. So queen c1 played, hitting this pawn on c7. And okay, you can play solidly with the move c6. But instead, Hans Niemann goes for the move c5, inviting white to play this amazing idea. Rook takes c5. It's a positional exchange sacrifice as black takes the rook. Queen takes, knight bd7, attacking the queen, and the queen comes to b5. So white has only one pawn for the exchange. Rook e6 played. What is black gonna do? Black's trying to find a way to activate the rooks, use the open files. And I think here white should definitely have gone for bishop d4, covering this b6 square. He didn't play that. He went for bishop h3, attacking the rook straight away. But now the rook comes in. Rook b6, queen a4, knight c5, attacking the queen. Queen goes to d4, but then white is forced to give up the pawn on the b3. And now black, in fact, is a full exchange up. That's certainly not something Magnus was looking for going into this match. Knight e2, rook b5, knight f1, queen b6. So even here the queens are coming off the board, and it looks like it's an absolutely risk-free position. Bishop has to save itself here with the move bishop d4, rook b3, rook a1. And black is an exchange up. But things are not that simple. Look at this bishop on h7, for instance. It's not doing that much. The knight cannot do much. The bishop is controlling the c8 square. So how is black going to make progress here? Well, here Hans, believing that nothing can go wrong, just instantly pushed his pawn to b5, getting ready to create a passer. But totally forgetting that now, after the move knight e2, the rook is trapped. It really can't go anywhere. It's not able to come back to b5 or to any other square. So here, that's the start of the match. Of absolute drama already in game one. Black is forced to defend the rook. f3, you're not in a rush. The rook can't go anywhere. Now, finally, you do take. And then rook b1, rook takes pawn on a3. King comes to the center. And black is a pawn up, but his pieces are just awfully placed. And look, this pawn will be gone very soon. You can hit the rook on a3 very soon. Knight c7 played. And rather than picking up that pawn, rook c1. Very good move. Hitting the knight. Rook a2 played. Very tricky move. Now if you do take, there is bishop takes d3. With counterplay, you're a piece down. But it's no longer back rank mate with rook c8. The king can always come to h7. So here, Magnus very calmly just moves his king to e3. And black is in huge trouble. Played here, this move, knight e8, rook c8. Back rank issues, you defend the knight, but it is bishop c8. And it is time to resign, because after the king goes away, it's time to take that knight on e8 with checkmate. So Magnus escapes in game one. And now, I mean, 90 minutes of 5+1, 60 minutes of 3+1 and a half an hour, bullet chess. Anything can happen. Still a lot of games to be played. But remember that at the end of the day, every single point counts. So this is a very expensive loss for Hans. Well, now let's go to the next game, because I think the next game played by Magnus, also with the white pieces, was absolutely fascinating. Let's have a look. Magnus with white again opens with the English opening. c4, knight f6, knight f3, e6. And we do get some sort of Catalan structure in which white refrains from playing the main lines with the Catalan, putting the pawn on d4, but instead Magnus plays d3. Now there are different ways of playing, and well, black goes for the move a5, grabbing space on the queen side, but white continues playing actively in the center. Knight c3, c6, e4. One of the main ideas of having the pawn on d3 to support that advance in the center. Now, there are a lot of ways to react, but white has already quite a pleasant space advantage, and particularly look at the bishop on c8. That's not a happy piece at all. Knight a6, e5. Excellent idea. Kicking the knight away, knight e7, and white goes h4, looking for action on the king side. b6 played, rook e1, bishop to b7. The bishop is hoping to contest this bishop on the long diagonal, but now change of structure. Pawn takes d5. Excellent move. Pawn takes, and here white goes d4. Space advantage. Bishop on b7 out of play. The knight doesn't have a bright future either. And, well, white has fantastic attacking prospects. Look at what Magnus is doing in the next couple of moves. Bishop c6, knight g5. The knight comes in. And after b5, now the queen comes in, threatening checkmate in one. How to react? I mean, if you kick the knight away, knight goes to h3 with possible sacrifices on h6. It's not fun to play this as black. So instead, Hans decided here to take the knight, bishop takes g5, bishop takes, queen e8. Maybe f6 is an idea to offer the exchange of queens. So the queen goes back, and here you can see that white is about to go bishop h6, exerting pressure against the pawn. The pawn on g7 is pinned. And, well, in that case, you're at least going to win the exchange, but maybe even more. King h8, rook ac1, very classy move. I mean, we are focused now on the king side, but here first you also got to make sure that all your pieces are going to join the party. Possible threats against the bishop on c6, knight b6. And look at this, knight e2, fantastic idea. Knight b4, threatening a knight fork, but here the knight comes in to f4. Excellent idea, you covering this d3 square, but also do note that black cannot really go for a move like f6. After pawn takes, all white's pieces are looking at that pawn on e6. So here, a lot of problems. Black can actually take the pawn on a2, hitting the rook on c1, which was played. But now Magnus once again ignores the threat, goes for knight h5. A fantastic idea in the battle for the initiative. Like if you do take the material, then the killer move here is bishop f6 with a huge mating threat on g7, which cannot be stopped. If you take the bishop, the queen lands on the g7 square. So pretty cool attack, just only 21 moves and black is completely busted. Rook g8, defending the pawn on g7 was played. Now, various options. I like the move played by Magnus as he goes for knight f6. Excellent idea. If you do take the knight, it's bishop takes with similar mating ideas. So we do have a huge knight fork after queen f8. You may consider grabbing the material, but playing for mate is definitely more tempting. Queen h5, attacking the pawn on h7, threatening mate. And, well, if you do something about it, don't forget that even now the bishop on c6 is no longer defended by the queen, so that is just a full piece. Anyway, pawn takes f6 played, bishop takes, rook to g7, and now after rook takes c6, I mean, the game is absolutely hopeless. I mean, any time of the day you can regain the material, you can try to come in with a rook. So that's why here Hans resigned. So two very painful losses at the start, and Magnus was just running away in the 5+1 section. Played a number of very cool games, also with the black pieces. So the question is, when is Hans going to bounce back? Well, look at the next game, what happens there. Again, Magnus playing with the white pieces, again goes for the English opening. Here Hans deviates with e5, and we do get a very interesting game. Let's have a look. So typical English line is all very well-known opening theory. Getting the bishop out to c5, queen check, bishop goes back. So all very standard, and white is spending quite a bit of time going back and forth with the queen. But okay, white does have a small space advantage. Potentially the bishop is quite good. But here, look, things are getting very interesting after bishop g5. You're pinning this knight on f6, bishop takes c3, and how do you recapture? If you do take with the queen, probably knight e4 is the idea, and black can just go for the exchange of queens. Everything will be swapped. Black seems to be okay. So white plays very ambitiously with pawn takes, h6, bishop takes, and now both sides get isolated double pawns, and they both do look pretty ugly. But how is Magnus, how is Hans able to target these weaknesses? Let's see what happens in the next couple of moves. Rook f to d1. Now, you can always take this pawn here, but let's say with a move like rook d6, it will be very difficult to untangle, or even knight d4 with the idea to come to f5. There is positional pressure for the pawn. So Hans is not interested in material, plays as actively as possible. Knight d4 by Magnus, d6, knight b3. Now the pawn has moved, d6 pawn is a target, but now white improves the structure, black does take, rook takes d6, bishop e6. Looks like position is playable again. b4, hoping to get in b5 and activate the bishop on the diagonal. Rook e8, be careful, you can't take here on a7. It's rook e1, bishop f1, bishop h3 with checkmate. But this mating idea is going to play a very important role in the next couple of moves. White started here with bishop f1, hitting the rook. Rook goes to c2, rook takes a7. And now, okay, if you do take on c3, there's rook takes b7. White is still a pawn up, so things are not that simple. And you would think, okay, white is missing his rook on the back rank. If you go rook c1, threatening bishop h3, after this move, king g2, look at this. You may consider rook takes f1. But if you do take with the king, there's bishop h3, and it's a similar mating procedure as we have seen already. However, rook takes bishop doesn't come with check, and there's this fantastic Shrischen Zook. Rook takes e6, and white will get eventually a winning rook endgame. So that doesn't work, but Hans is calculating this kind of stuff. Played bishop c8, defending the pawn. And here Magnus could have played differently. He could drop back with one of the rooks to the back rank to cover the king. King g2, getting out of the back rank is also quite sensible. But he does play here rook takes f6. But now, after rook to c1, king to g2, how else to deal with this threat of bishop h3? Now the trick with rook takes f1 does work. There's no longer the idea to eliminate that key piece, the bishop on c8. So after king takes bishop h3, it is checkmate. I mean, Magnus realized that he blundered here, decided to grab another pawn. In fact, he does have 3 pawns for the piece, but coordination is pretty bad. Look how Hans went on to convert this advantage. So he just brings out the pieces, the bishop comes in, bishop to d5. Now the back rank is weak, but also the second rank as the rook comes in. If you go king h3, probably rook h8, and it's also not going to end well for white. So king goes back to g1, bishop e6, g4, rook d8, excellent move, threatening mate, rook a1, rook dd2. Now 2 rooks on the second rank, that's game over. h4, a bunch of checks. You're able to pick up the pawn on h4, and there's nothing you can do. I mean, one by one, these pawns are going to drop. So after rook a7, rook h8 was played. Here, Magnus resigned, because if you do take the pawn, it's rook hd2, and there's nothing you can do against a back rank ladder mate with a 2 rook. So Magnus just completely destroyed Hans in the 5+1 section. 7-2, a 5-point lead. And now there are still 2 more segments to go. But the question is, when is Hans getting on a roll? He needs to win a couple of games in a row to put more pressure on his opponent. And well, there are chances with a shorter time control, always. So we are not going to cover all the games in detail, but I want to show you one fragment, one of the first games in the 3+1 section, as we have the following position. Hans is playing with white and Magnus with black. And here, I mean, this was a time trouble situation. I mean, we had this kind of structure for a long period of time. Magnus was defending the pawn on e6, and I mean, he does have some sort of a blockade. White has the bishop pair, but the knights are fantastic blockading pieces, and neither side was really able to make some progress. But then this is typical for the 3+1 section, is that okay, at some point you're down 2 seconds, only 1 second increment, and here, I mean, Magnus probably felt that Hans was not making any progress, so he really tried to do something here, believing that he could play the move e5. After pawn takes e5, I was looking like, what's going on? Knight takes e5, and well, there is knight takes e5, and Magnus, shaking his head, realized that he just blundered his piece, because I mean the square is just not enough protected. I mean, you can swap everything, but then white will emerge with an extra piece, and okay, therefore Hans won the game. Magnus resigned immediately after knight takes knight. But that's quite typical. I mean, these blunders happen in the last seconds of the game. So important start for Hans at the start of the 3+1 section. Then the next game, I thought this was like the key moment in the match. Magnus playing with white again, and look at this. We do get a very quiet Sicilian which eventually leads to a more sort of Spanish, Italian type of opening. A lot of quiet play. I mean, Black is doing okay in these positions. Magnus is happy with the sort of play he gets. And well, look at this. You see this position and you think, okay, Black is doing okay here with rooks on the B and C file. It's not really clear what White is going to do. If you move the bishop, the pawn on B2 is hanging. But Magnus played here instantly this move, D4, and hits the knight. You would expect now the knight to go away. But here, look at this. Knight takes E4, completely missed by Magnus again. It's the second blunder in a row. Knight takes E4, knight takes E4. If you do take with the queen, everything can be swapped. And at the end of the day, this bishop on C1 is hanging. So this is a technically winning endgame. But there followed bishop F4. Of course, you're not going to resign, especially not when you're having a lead. It's also playing against the clock. I mean, also Black still got to win this game. Knight goes back, queen takes pawn. I mean, everything comes off the board. Knight e5, which is a knight fork, but there follows bishop takes d6. Now, knight takes e7, bishop takes e7, bishop f8, forcing the exchange of another set of minor pieces. Bishop takes, king takes, rook takes a7. This is not such an easy endgame. Probably you got to go here for rook a8 and try to trade off that powerful piece. But now, after rook c1 check, king h2, rook takes b2, Black's idea is to try to win as many pawns as possible, get 2 rooks on the second and collect these pawns. But look at this, knight e5 is the main problem. You're threatening the pawn on f7, but on top of that, there's also knight e3 with a knight fork. And therefore, Black has to be very careful. Played here rook c2, rook takes f7, king g8, king g3. Now Black is 2 pawns down for the exchange. And well, who's actually going to play for a win here? Rook c3, king h2, rook d2, rook f4. I mean, objectively, it should be a draw, but I don't think White is risking anything now. g5, ambitious move, but rook comes to f5, rook takes d4, rook takes g5, check. 2 options. If you go into the corner, it's checkmate. You better don't do that. King f8 played, rook f5. Now it's a 3 versus 1. And okay, you can play on forever. King e8, knight g4. And probably, well, just go back and try to swap the rooks at some point. But look at this, rook d6 played. And now these knights, they are so terribly annoying. Knight f6 check. King e7, knight e4, and the 2 rooks are under threat, which means that White's going to win back the exchange. Will be 2 pawns up in this rook endgame, and Hans had seen enough here. I thought this was the turning point in the match. I mean, Magnus had a lead, but he should have lost this game objectively after this terrible blunder. But instead, he managed to win the game, and well, the 3+1 section ended equally. I think it was like 4-4. Then in the bullet section, Magnus even ran away, extending his lead to a 10-point difference. I mean, going into this segment of bullet 1+1, he was already in a 5-point lead still, and never in the history of the Speed Chess Championships this has ever happened that the player trailing managed to overcome this 5 points deficit. So, I mean, we knew that it's going to be hard going into the bullet section, but in the end, Magnus ran away to extend his lead to 10 points. And then, okay, with a few more minutes to go, it was basically over. Magnus showed his real class at this section. He played some very nice games. In the end, he basically gave up the last couple of games. He didn't care that much anymore. And well, at the end, also the bullets section ended equally. So that means that this Speed Chess Championship semi-final between Magnus Carlsen and Hans Niemann ended in favor of Magnus. He managed to win 17.5, 12.5, and that 5-point gap was already created at the start of the 5+1 section. So this must have come as a relief. Magnus admitted that play was not that great all the time. He even didn't get much joy out of this match. He really wanted to finish this match as soon as possible. He think he played well. I mean, he felt also that Hans played actually quite well, but he blundered also a lot, as you can see. I mean, these shorter time control games, they're often decided by a lot of blunders. Magnus even said that he never felt like he lost control during the match. He was always dominating. The outcome was never really in doubt. And yeah, okay, Hans is a good player, but Magnus is from a different planet. So, a pity for Hans fans. They will probably a bit more silent, or they will just hate Magnus even more now. But anyway, this has been settled. This is the match we all have been waiting for more than 2 years. And finally it happened. Thanks Magnus Carlsen and Hans Niemann for this fantastic show. And well, hopefully more of these matches in the future. Probably cover some more fascinating games in the next couple of days from this match. Anyway, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Thanks for all the support, and I'll see you soon again.